Hey everyone, welcome to the Sunday Night BattleCry. I, of course, am Mark Meckler. I'm excited to be with you, and we are in the home stretch. So this week's call to action is get out there and vote. And not just get out there and vote, but we have a campaign we're running right now called Vote Your Values. We want to make sure that when you vote, you're not just voting for the candidate that you like, you're not just voting against the candidate you don't like, but you're thinking about the things that matter to you, the things that you value. You're thinking about maybe family values. You're thinking about your pro-life values. Maybe you're thinking about the fact that you are a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment. Maybe you're thinking about the idea of limited government and balancing the budget. These are things that might be important to you, and you should make sure that when you vote, you're voting for the candidate that most well aligns with your values. So again, get out there and vote. Don't forget to vote, but get out there and vote your values. That's the important part. As we go into the election week this week, I want to talk first about the idea of GOTV. You probably heard this abbreviation, GOTV. What does that mean? You might not know. It means get out the vote. So we use these acronyms all the time, and I think sometimes we forget. If you don't pay attention to politics constantly, you might not know what some of these acronyms mean. It's kind of like being in the military. If you're in, you know them. If you're not, you don't. So GOTV means get out the vote. And each party has their get out the vote apparatus. So the parties run them, third party organizations run them. Get out the vote runs everything from having formal door knocking operations where people go around and remind people to vote, people who hopefully agree with them. People make phone calls to people to encourage them to get out and vote. People send text messages. You're probably getting a lot of those annoying text messages right now, reminding you to get out and vote. But I'm here to remind you to get out and vote. And I'm here to remind you to engage in your own get out the vote. Now, it's great if you participate with the party of your choice and help them with their get out the vote efforts by going door to door, by making calls, or by texting. Convention of States has some of that internally that we do. You can check with your state teams and our telepatriot teams. We obviously always do that in accordance with the laws, rules, and regulations of the federal government and any state. But we do have ways that you can participate in that. But I think there's a more important way and a simpler way. And that is you can make sure you get out and vote. And then you can make sure that your circle gets out and votes. What do I mean by that? I mean, if you're married, make sure your spouse has voted. Make sure your kids who are of voting age have voted. Make sure your friends and family have voted. Make sure your fellow churchgoers, whom you know, maybe in your small group or your Bible study, have gone out and voted. Make sure that everybody who you know that's eligible, that thinks like you, gets out and votes. Honestly, that's as valuable, if not more valuable, than any other get out and vote program. If everybody who thinks like you voted and then worked to make sure everybody they know that thinks like them voted, then people like you would win the election for sure, people who think like you. So get out and vote. Again, vote your values, but then make sure everybody around you gets out and votes. I would also encourage you to get out and vote early. This is a really important one. Election day comes on us fast. Who knows what happens? You could be sick. You could have a family emergency. You could be forced to travel on business, and you could miss your opportunity to vote. I'm going to be honest, that's happened to me in the past in primaries, local primaries, where I thought I was going to vote locally on the election day. I like voting election day. I like waiting in line. I know that sounds crazy. It's the only time I like waiting in line, but I like being out there doing my civic duty, hanging out with my fellow citizens, and then going there and actually voting. But I've run into a situation where I didn't realize I was going to have to travel. I had to travel, and I missed some primary votes. And so I'm never going to do that again. Voting early, I voted early. You should vote early, and you should encourage everybody you know to vote early. And that brings us to the election recap. Where are we right now? And I think there are some extraordinary trends to watch, and I want to point out some of those. Who's going to win the election? Let's start with that. My answer is I'm not God, in case you didn't know. I know. I think it's pretty clear. I can't predict the future, but what I can do is look at the trends and I can give you my best guess. And at this point, we're getting pretty close down to the wire for the election. And I think there's some trends that point in Donald Trump's direction, that point to him winning the election. I think one of the key core trends that is really amazing to me is that there is no example in modern history of Democrats not having a voter registration advantage and winning the presidential election. In fact, history tells us that unless Democrats have a 3-point registration advantage, They've never won a presidential election. Well, right now, Republicans have a 1 point registration advantage. So if that holds true, Democrats can't win the presidential election. I'm not saying they can. I'm just telling you that's historic. That would be the historical anomaly that would have to take place. Here's another thing that's going on. Republicans have traditionally not been great at the early vote, at getting out early, voting by mail. The numbers are off the charts. Republicans are outperforming 2022. Republicans are outperforming 2020. This is a big part of the news going on around voting all over the country. We are seeing historic overperformance by Republicans in the early vote, both vote by mail and in person early voting. And I recommend in person if you can, by the way. I think this is interesting, but it's also inconclusive. And here's why it's inconclusive. There's a question about the early vote is, are you just scavenging the day of vote? In other words, are the people who are going out to vote early right now, like me, people who would have otherwise voted on election day? And maybe what you see is a downturn in Republican turnout on election day, not based on enthusiasm or anything like that, but based on the fact that a lot of people that might have voted on election day are voting early. That's a possibility. Another possibility is simply that people who don't normally go out and vote are going out to vote early. And they're going out to vote early because they don't want to wait in line. They've heard it's really rough on election day. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they just don't like the crowds, and they are getting out to vote early. These might be the marginal voters, right? The voters who are low propensity voters who don't vote every election that are getting out and voting early. We really can't tell, but we can say for sure that the trend of this upswing in Republican early voting is a good thing and makes it look good for Republicans. Another thing that I think makes it look good for Republicans and Donald Trump is the desperation of the left. And you're seeing this in their narrative, in their messaging, in the fact that Kamala Harris is now doing all kinds of media that she had refused to do. She had tried to run Joe Biden's patented basement campaign. That didn't work for her. Now she's out in the media and she can't seem to even answer friendly questions. I heard somebody say, and I thought this was one of the best takes on the CNN town hall, that she lost a one-person debate. She was there by herself, couldn't answer basic questions, couldn't distinguish herself from Joe Biden, couldn't answer simple questions about the border. And even when you look at how Democrat analysts analyze that performance, Dana Bash said she didn't close the deal. Other Democrat analysts said that she completely failed, that she lost that debate against herself. So I think what you see is an increasingly desperate Democrat campaign as they see this election slipping away from themselves. I'm seeing all kinds of things on X. I would be careful about paying attention to those things. If you are conservative and if you want to see a Republican elected, my advice to you is work, work, work. Don't get cocky. Don't take anything for granted. Work until election day. Make sure your friends and family vote. Going back to what we said at the top of the half hour, not only get out and vote your values, but make sure everybody you know gets out and votes the values that they share with you. Now, let's presume Trump wins. And if he does, the question is, what's going to happen? What's he going to face? What's he going to face once he's inaugurated? But even more importantly, what's he going to face in between? And I think what we can say, generally speaking, is he's going to face incredible opposition. I think there's going to be violence. I think you're going to see Antifa and Black Lives Matter in the streets. I think they're getting ready to do this stuff now. They've been sort of laying back, waiting for this moment. I think you're going to see that all over the country. I think you're going to see legal challenges. We already have Democrats in the House of Representatives who said they will not certify. I think there's a fundamental question. And Kamala Harris is vice president. She will oversee the certification initially, right? Is that correct? Or actually, I think it'll be, I could be wrong about that. It could be the newly inaugurated Congress because I think Congress comes in first. No, but maybe Vice President Harris is still there, right? As overseeing that. I don't know exactly how that works. Will they certify the election? That's really a fundamental question. What are we going to see? What kind of legal challenges will there be? Will there be legal challenges? Absolutely. We know the left intends this. And then once he is inaugurated, if we get past all of that, if he's elected and they get past the legal challenges and he is inaugurated, what happens after that? What's it look like? What will he face? We know he's going to face a deep state in open revolt. Last time Do you remember they called it the resistance? And there were people who just refused to do the things that he said. We're going to see that. The good news is I think his administration will be faster acting and more equipped to deal with that stuff than they were last time. I think they have the wisdom born of experience. They have the scars to know the kind of stuff that happens. They are going to have the plans to overcome that kind of stuff. And then we ask a little bit longer term question. What's the agenda for the first 100 days look like? And I got to say, I think that is too long term of thinking. We hear people talking about the first 100 days. My question is, what's he going to do the first afternoon? What's he going to do in the first couple of days? Because I think what he needs to do is catch the left off balance, and he needs to hit them hard, repeatedly, immediately in the first day, the first 48, first 72 hours. You know, there's a good example of this, of how this works. Governor Matt Bevin in Kentucky did this previously. I was there during the time period. He was a one-term governor, but when he was elected, he went in conservative, guns blazing, did everything he wanted to do. He did it, a lot of it, in the first week. I was there during that week. The left was on their heels. They had no time to react. They had no time to protest. They had no time to do anything, no time to filibuster. They just struggled to keep up. Even the media struggled to keep up because each day was something new that outraged them. They had no time to build up and foment the outrage. And I think that's what President Trump should do. There's an article I want to refer you to. I'm going to quote extensively from it here. I don't usually do that, as you know. Usually I'm just riffing, but I think this is important for you to read. And I think this is what Donald Trump should do. This is from Steve Hayward, and it is featured 10/25/2024 in the American Mind. And you can go look that article up. And Hayward says he needs to learn from Reagan and hit the ground running. Reagan was too slow to get started, and there is a specter of getting like bound up in the mud and the fight that could stop. This happened, by the way, to Boris Johnson in the UK as well. And Donald Trump is going to have to get blazing immediately. If he wants to do this, if he wants to force the swamp to be on the defensive, and I think that is the only way to do, he shouldn't follow this 100-day agenda that comes out of the New Deal. He needs to hit bold hammer blows. Those are Hayward's words on Inauguration Day. So number one, I'm going to go through his list because I agree with all of us. Suspend all funding for the United Nations until the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees is disbanded entirely. And I would say suspend all money to the UN, period, end of story, and not much they can do. Just suspend it. Number two, following Saul Alinsky's advice to make your opponents live by their own rules, you should install a acting deputy secretary for civil rights in the Department of Education, and have that person send dear colleague letters, just like the Obama and Biden administration opposed their Title IX rules, to the president or trustee of every college across the country, declaring it is illegal in the legal opinion of the Trump administration that every DEI program is in violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, and that all federal funds, including student loans, will be suspended until all DEI offices are closed and their personnel dismissed, not merely transferred to some renamed job. Within weeks, you'll even have Democrats calling for the abolishment of the Education Department. Isn't that a dream? Number three, we need to indict Health and Human Services Assistant Secretary Rachel Levine for conspiracy and obstruction of justice for his role in getting age requirements dropped for transgender surgery on minors and for interfering with the litigation currently underway regarding these rules. That needs to happen immediately. He needs to, next, number four, pardon every person convicted of nonviolent charges like trespassing for January 6th. He should send federal marshals to spring anyone still in federal prison. And he should add to that insult a declaration that we need to free up federal prison space for the violent leftists who are going to trash our cities and flout our laws. I love this. Need to be very careful. If people did serious damage, if people did violence, we need to review all those cases closely, make sure they're not trumped up. Also, there's a suggestion here that he should do a blanket pardon of Hunter Biden and Joe Biden on the ground that we shouldn't hound our ex-presidents, and also that Joe Biden has made Hunter Biden's life bad enough. I'm not sure I agree with that one. I might be a little bit more aggressive than Hayward would be on this. I think people need to pay the price. Number five, given the recent disclosure that Israel's battle plans against Iran were immediately leaked by some international security apparatus, along with the scandal of the State Department's pro-Iran envoy Robert Malley sharing classified material with Iran, Senate and House should move immediately to revive their committees on internal security and conduct intensive investigations into Iranian penetration or influence over our government. Left wing is going to howl McCarthyism. That's what Hayward says. I agree with that. But like racism, that overused charge has lost its sting. The original mandate for leadership Heritage Foundation produced in 1980 called for reviving committees on internal security. Those were abolished in the 70s. We need to do that. And Trump needs to get on that. Senate and House need to get on that. Number 6, with excessive government spending having reached a crisis point, President Trump ought to mount a federal challenge to our profligate Congress by impounding some spending in defiance of the 1974 Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act. For starters, Hayward nominates impounding State Department grants for gender studies programs in Pakistan. That exists, apparently, for real, in the COVID relief bill of 2021. This act opens the floodgates to uncontrolled spending and expanded power of the administrative state, and even Congress itself seldom complies with its terms. There's a good argument that the act is unconstitutional, and even if he loses the legal fight over that, it's a great public battle to pick. It means putting Congress on the defensive. Number 7, civil service reform allowing for wholesale dismissal of career Democrats in government will take time. But in the meantime, Trump ought to have his cabinet officials determine who's useless or obstructive and order them to work from home, then cut off their email and access to department computer servers the next day. Paying destructive bureaucrats to do nothing is, of course, a waste, but in a larger scheme, that would be a absolute benefit for taxpayers. Send out some of these de facto pink slips to a handful of bureaucrats on January 20th. Get it done. Number 8, announce a new executive policy of quotas for hosting migrants granted asylum, requiring that Martha's Vineyard, Marin County, and similar environments take in their fair share. Cut off any federal funds for any jurisdiction that refuses to comply or implement roadblocks. So many houses on Martha's Vineyard are vacant so much of the year. It's time to put them to humanitarian use. All Trump needs to do is threaten those actions, and support for a border wall will surge. Look, I love these, and there are a lot more, and I agree with Hayward. These need to be done day 1. Not day 100, not day 40 or 50. What we need to do is get radical, put the left on defense immediately, make it so there are so many legal fights, so many PR fights, so many public fights that the left has to have to defend. They can't defend them all. Attack on all fronts at once, put the left on defense. There's a great article by Hayward, and you should definitely go read that at theamericanmind.org. Look up Stephen Hayward, and you're going to find it there. So, I mean, this is my personal opinion based on Hayward's opinion and a lot more. I think he ought to make an edict to do away with the Department of Education, Energy, EPA. I think he ought to disband the FBI. Anything that's under the control of the United States president ought to be reviewed for disbanding, and put Elon Musk in charge of all of that. Right now, as we speak, this is according to reporting from Todd Bensman, who is a friend and a great reporter on the migrant crisis, the illegal immigrant crisis at our border. 150,000 migrants on their way to our border. Why? Right now? Because they're terrified Trump's going to become president. And they're saying this openly out loud. They support Kamala Harris. They don't want Trump to be president. Bensman's out there in those caravans, reporting from those caravans that they want Joe Biden and his surrogate, Kamala Harris, reelected president, essentially. Why? Because they know that Kamala Harris will leave the border open, and they know that Donald Trump will close the border. This is just reality. All right. What is the October surprise? What are the October surprises? Well, first of all, we have, wait for it, you're going to be completely shocked. Donald Trump is Hitler. Oh, I'm so surprised to hear that. We've never heard that before, except every single Republican candidate going all the way back at least to Barry Goldwater. So that's before I was even aware of politics, and before that. And this is just something they do. And the question becomes, when everybody's Hitler, is anybody really Hitler? And first and foremost, I want to say no. Nobody's really Hitler. Hitler is unique in the modern era. The eradication of 6 million Jews, concentration camps at a scale of human destruction we've never seen, an evil that we have not seen in the modern era, industrialized scale of termination of human life. And referring to Donald Trump as Hitler, or frankly, almost anybody else in the modern era, is ridiculous. It also denigrates those who lost their lives at the hands of Adolf Hitler, and it takes away the definition of evil. I mean, Adolf Hitler is the very definition of evil. And if everybody's Hitler, I get referred to as a Nazi, which is ironic as a Jewish Christian. But if everybody's Hitler, if Donald Trump is Hitler, if George Bush is Hitler, remember they used to call him Bush Hitler? They'd put those together. Donald Cheney was Hitler. If everybody's Hitler, that loses its meaning. And this is outrageous, but this is the October surprise. John Kelly apparently says that Trump spoke approvingly of Hitler. John Kelly was, of course, for a short period of time, Donald Trump's chief of staff. He was a guy who didn't like being Trump's chief of staff because he was used to being a high-ranking military official where people couldn't tell him to do. And as a chief of staff to a president, you're essentially the lackey for the president. Nothing wrong with that. I don't mean that to denigrate, but that's your job, is to do what the president wants you to do. John Kelly didn't like that. He had a big ego and it pissed him off. And so he just started to speak out against the president. He used to threaten to leak. Ultimately was terminated, left the president's employees, been speaking out against him ever since. My question for John Kelly, if I could sit down with John Kelly right now, is to say, if you really believed that President Trump idolized Hitler, if he spoke positively about Hitler, why did you work for him? Like, what kind of a disgusting, vile, sick human being are you that you would serve a president that speaks admiringly of Adolf Hitler? You did that. You did that voluntarily. You didn't quit out of disgust. You didn't blow the whistle on that. You didn't say that to the American people at that time. In fact, you didn't say it until 2 weeks before an election. And we're supposed to believe you? I don't think so. John Kelly, I think what this proves is that you are vile, villainous scum. Nobody else heard the president say this. Nobody else has ever heard Donald Trump say stuff like this. This is an October surprise that's, one, not a surprise, and two, absolutely untrue. Here's the second October surprise, apparently, which is apparently it is being stated that Donald Trump vilified, attacked, tried to discredit a female Hispanic soldier who was murdered. Yet everybody who was in the room that is named denies these charges. In fact, the family of this Hispanic female soldier says that Donald Trump was nothing but polite to them, respectful to them, cared for them, showed integrity with them, showed heart to them. That's what the family says. And they're mad at the Atlantic and Jeffrey Goldberg, another villainous scum, for saying this and for using the loss of their loved one as a political ploy when apparently there's absolutely no evidence to this. But by the way, not only did the Atlantic write about it and let Jeffrey Goldberg peddle this trash, CBS News reported it in their lead as if it were fact. So these are the October surprises. Donald Trump is apparently now anti-military, probably the most positive pro-military guy in modern history, has widespread support among the military and their families, tried to rebuild our military on his watch, wants to rebuild our military, believes in a strong, unwoke military. This guy, we're supposed to believe, is a Nazi and anti-military. Oh, by the way, we're supposed to believe he's a Nazi. He has Jewish grandkids. We've seen him at the wall at the Kotel in Israel, praying at the wall. We watched him recently at Rabbi Menachem Shearson's grave. Oh, hell. I mean, this is incredible stuff. Wearing yarmulke, that doesn't sound very Nazi. You can go look up the pictures for yourself if you don't believe me. This is the most pro-Israel, pro-Jewish president in modern history. They're trying to paint him as a Nazi. That's the October surprise. Not going to work, not working, no credibility. Nobody's listening to this stuff. Nobody cares. I think a big question we have to ask ourselves now as we move into the election, and it looks like Donald Trump has the momentum, is will there be violence after the election? And I think if Donald Trump wins, the answer is yes. I'm pretty much unequivocal about that. I think what the chatter is that Antifa is preparing and Black Lives Matter are preparing. The fascists, the Black Bloc people are preparing, and they are going to attack. And what I believe will happen is blue cities are going to burn. And this would be my approach. If there are blue cities in a blue state and the blue mayors and the blue governor don't want to do anything about them, then we should let them do what they may. Now, I feel bad in saying that because there will be human suffering. There might be loss of life. There will be destruction of property of innocent people. But that is entirely the fault of blue states, blue governors, blue cities, and those who vote for them. And it's not the responsibility of the rest of the country to step in and do anything about that. Now, there also might be violence in blue cities in red states, in states like Texas, where blue cities like Houston or blue cities like Austin. That's possible as well. And in those states, I would argue if the mayors in those blue cities are Democrats and won't step in, then the governors of those states should step in forcefully and push back and stop immediately that violence. We in the red states, me being here in Texas, we should not tolerate that, even in blue cities in red states. That should be stopped. The final thing I want to say about this is to you, if you are a conservative, if you are a red state kind of a person like I am, if you believe in Second Amendment rights, if you believe in the rule of law, do not be baited. Do not get involved. Do not practice violence. Do not go into blue areas and try to stop the violence. Now, if you have to defend your own property, by all means, I would encourage you to do so. Be properly armed, be trained, be prepared, keep your family safe, keep your property safe according to the law. But that's for those of you in red states, in red areas. If you're in a blue state and you have the right to defend yourself, I recommend you do that as well. But get a good lawyer because they're going to come after you for defending yourself. So I think there's going to be violence. You don't get involved in that violence short of defending your family and your property, and stay out of blue areas where they're going to do violence to themselves. As we go into our Q&A, there's a couple things I want to mention before we do that. As I started with, get out and vote early, vote your values. Do get out the vote, GOTV, among your friends and family. Make sure they all vote and that they vote their values. Well, as long as their values align with their values. Make sure you're wearing the swag too, the COS gear, the t-shirts, the hats. I'm dressed up a little bit today because I had a bunch of media stuff, so I'm not wearing any, but make sure you're wearing it. We have a new Term Limits Now t-shirt, which is really popular. Go to article5outfitters.com. Take a look. I think you're going to find a lot of great deals there, and you're going to find a lot of stuff you want. We've got new knives in the store that I absolutely love. I got a couple of those new items myself. I love carrying a pocket knife. Every real man, frankly, and woman carries a pocket knife. So make sure you're carrying one of the Article 5 Convention of States pocket knives. Don't forget about our Save the America campaign, Save Their America campaign. This is really important. You can promote this on social media at hashtag Save Their America. And really what I want you to do is to participate in that campaign. And what you do is I want you to upload a quick testimonial talking about who you're fighting for, your kids, your grandkids, the kids yet to come, your nephews, your nieces, the children of your neighbors. When we say Save Their America, that's who I want you to picture. America's always been a country. We're great patriots. We're willing to fight for the futures of those yet to come. And I think that's important that we do that. So again, go to conventionofstates.com/upload, upload a video of you explaining who you're fighting for and why. That's the hashtag Save Their America campaign. Also, don't forget to tune in for election night, COS Live starting at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. That's really important. I'll be there for part of it. Rita Peters will be there, Mike Ferris, a dozen or more of our reporters across the country. You can do that at conventionofstates.com/COS Live. That again is election night starting at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. As the precincts start reporting, it's really important. We're going to start reporting with you, and we're going to have live. I'll join from wherever I'm going to be. I'm not sure where I'm going to be yet, but I will join that as well. All right, now we're going to do Ask Mark Anything. This is my favorite part where you get to ask me questions, which is really great because I love your input. Conventionofstates.com/Ask Mark if you want to ask me a question. So we're going to start with Tracy Grabiak. And she says, I recently watched a 2015 debate between Mike Ferris and Larry Arndt. Larry Arndt, by the way, is the president and chairman, president at least, of Hillsdale College, where my daughter graduated from. And she says, since then, 15 more states have passed the COS action resolution, and the grassroots army has grown a lot. Do you know Dr. Arndt's current position or opinion on this issue? Tracy, my answer is nope, I don't. I think he was wrong back then. I'm hoping that he's learned something. We have massive support right there at Hillsdale College. We have chairs of departments. We have very prominent professors who support us. Larry Aaron was on the wrong side of that issue. Mike Ferris was correct. I don't know. Maybe I'll go ask him sometime soon. Thomas Harris asks, can CEO address the root cause money of our nation's problems by eliminating external money from politics? No PACs, no What else? No party money, no corporate donations, no lobbyist contributions, limiting contributions to actual constituents. We can ensure that politicians serve only the people they represent. Yeah, Thomas, you and I might have a different perspective on this. I don't think money is the problem in our politics. I don't think that's what influences politicians, at least not the way you think of it. I think it's the idea that they can get rich in politics influences them. Lobbyists have influence over politicians, not because they give money in politics, but because politicians know they can come out and be lobbyists and get these sweet jobs. We need to ban that revolving door of being in government and then going into lobbying. I don't like campaign finance laws. And the reason I don't like those laws is because they're always, by nature, drafted by incumbents. Who's going to draft them? You? Me? No. It's going to be the politicians. And who are they going to draft them to be favorable to? As they always have, to incumbents. So I'm not a big fan of campaign finance laws. I don't think we're going to be able to do anything good with those. They generally do more harm than good. So I'm going to close with that. I'm going to go back to vote, vote, vote. Get out there, vote your values. You know what that means. Encourage your friends, family, and loved ones, churchgoers, fellow workers, whoever they are. Encourage everybody, if they think like you, get out and vote your values. And we will see you next week live here on the BattleCry.